about a month or a couple months ago. He saw I was coming to town, asked if I'd be interested in doing something. And so I'm really glad we're able to hook this up and set it up. It's great to be here again. I love Australia. Every time I come, I have a great time. I always make new friends. The musicians we get to work with here are always top notch, and the food is always good. The people are always nice. It's just a really good vibe, man. So I always enjoy coming out. And I want to talk about a couple things that are specific with one of the things we're doing here with Ed here at the shop is he is our sole dealer right now for the mutes that Ed Hirschman and I designed. He's a sole dealer in Australia for us right now. We're working on a couple others, and we'll see if those develop. But as of right now, this is the only place in Australia where you can get these plungers that he's got here. There's some sitting right over there, or our buzz mutes. So I want to talk about those, share with you, where the idea to make this came from and why we decided to make these plunger mutes, and what went into it and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to get into that a little bit too. We've had a lot of fun designing mutes. It's really become kind of a passion for me out of nowhere. I've always been a mute nerd. I've always been a trumpet geek. Call me whatever you want to call me. I don't really care. I love the trumpet. I love the concept of being able to create music with your breath by blowing through a metal tube. It's pretty unique and pretty special, man. A great way to make a living and get to travel the world doing what I love. So, when Ed contacted me about doing this, I said, well, let me see what our schedule is when it gets closer, because I didn't know the specifics. And it turns out we got in yesterday, had last night off, have today off. We start rehearsing with the symphony and chorus tomorrow. We're doing concerts at the Opera House. Some of our own music, some with just the big band, some with the symphony and the chorus. And we're doing a young people's concert for kids while we're here. I think we're doing 3 or 4 different concerts while we're here. But I had today off, so it worked out beautifully to set this up, man. So thank you, Ed, for having me. And thank you all for showing up. So we were talking, once we locked in the date and stuff, we're talking about what to do. What I want to do. A lot of times people do master classes or whatever, and they come up and work with a student and tell the student all the things that they're doing wrong and help them get better and all that. That's not really my thing. I'm not really, I work with students one-on-one privately, but not in front of a group of people, because it can be embarrassing as a student, because I was that student once, and you sit there in front of a group of people and everyone points out all the shit that you're doing wrong. You're like, oh man, and I don't, that's just not my thing, but I am who I am. I love doing what I do, and I'm happy to share anything I can with anybody who wants to hear it. So, I'm a professional trumpet player. I live in New York City. I've been with Lincoln Center Orchestra full-time since 2010. I was in and out subbing in the band for 10 years before that. I spent about 20 years with the Mingus Big Band. Played here with them many years ago, a couple of times. I do the music for Sesame Street, the television show. Anybody seen Sesame Street? That's me on trumpet and kazoo. That's where I make my real money. I do a lot of television work for other shows. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, if you've ever seen that show, you've heard me play the trumpet. Schmigadoon was the thing on Apple TV. Whatever, a lot of different commercial stuff. I've done a lot of different Broadway shows in my career. I toured with Ray Charles. I've done a lot of work with a lot of different people over my career, and I've learned a few things over the years. So I'm happy to share any experiences that I can with you guys. I want this to be pretty informal. I don't want to just sit up here and and talk for an hour and a half or whatever. I can, but I would much rather interact and answer any questions any of you have or any insight you want to share with me. I want this to be pretty informal and relax and just have a good time and get to know you all and hopefully have you get to know me and become friends, and we can be in touch. And I like informality. I don't like the formal thing as much. That's just not my personality. So with that said, there are some things I do want to talk about, and this is the first thing, is this plunger mute that I developed. So does anybody have any of these yet? This plunger? You got one? Okay, what's your impression of it?
It's great.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Why?
It's great because, from what I can tell, it doesn't affect the pitch as much as like going down to the hardware store and grabbing a, I'm not sure quite how you've done that.
Yeah.
I like the sound. can't decide whether the coin should be one way or the other.
Okay, we'll talk about all that. We'll talk about all that. So you're the only one? Anybody else check this out yet? You got one.
Yeah.
Do I know you?
Yeah, I'm Harrison.
Harrison, yeah, man, what's happening, man? Good to see
Not
you.
much, it's good, it's good. Yeah, I really like it, like the intonation's really good depending on when it's closed and open.
Cool.
You could fit, I got the max one, so I could put another mute underneath so I can do pixie work with it.
Yeah.
And the intonation's like really clean, whether it's with the Kenny Penny closed or
I
open.
hate that name, by the way.
Kenny Penny.
Cool.
It's good.
All right, well, do you have any, anybody have like a toilet plunger? Do you have any here? Do you have one here with you? Does anybody have, do you have one here by chance? No? Okay.
Oh, wait.
You got one? Oh, shit, right on.
That means he's only going to go.
Oh, the toilet's just on.
Oh.
So, here's, first of all, intention matters. All right, these are made for what? It's not for making music. So if you use one of these, first of all, like when I first started playing the plunger, like seriously getting into it, I've always kind of been into it, but I was touring with this jazz singer named John Hendricks, and we were playing at a festival in Bern, Switzerland. Actually, Bern, I think is how they pronounce it. But anyway, I was playing with John Hendricks, and up on stage walks Clark Terry. And he came up and he sat in with us. So I got to play with Clark Terry, and then he scattered with John Hendricks, and they scattered together. And I played the plunger solo during that gig. Clark Terry, after the gig, came and he talked to me for like an hour and a half, man, talking about plungers. Like, man, I like your plunger playing. You sound good. And I took a look at it, and he said, but you got to cut a hole in here, because you got to have somewhere for the sound to come, and it creates a whole new tonal landscape for you, And then he said, but you got to put a coin in there so you can flip the coin so it'll be in closed position or open position depending on the timbre you want to get from the plunger. And he said, and you got to use a little bit bigger plunger because bigger plungers have more depth, so they're a little better in tune. So he kind of gave me a master class in plunger after this gig, and Clark Terry, the greatest. I mean, who doesn't know who Clark Terry is? There's this new thing out now called the Google. Google him.
He was my first teacher.
Was he? He was a teacher to all of us, man. Keep on keeping on, baby. He was the greatest, man. I miss him dearly, man. But I learned a lot that day from CT, and so this one doesn't have a hole. So check out if you play closed plunger. It just doesn't really. It's almost a half step sharp, right? And so you got to cut a hole in it. That'll bring the pitch down a little bit, but it's still going to be well over a quarter of a tone sharp with a plunger this size. Now Clark happened to play a big blue plunger, and I asked him about it. He told me he got it, and in fact I've heard that Snooky Young and he were on the road together, maybe with Basie, and they were staying at a hotel in Sweden, and the housekeeper came in to clean their room and had a toilet plunger, like a plunger to fix the toilet with, the big blue plunger. They asked her, where can we get one of those? So they went to the store and they bought these big blue plungers, and that's what both of them, Snooky Young, anybody know Snooky Young, so they both have these big blue toilet plungers that they use. And the thing with the bigger plunger is the pitch is better because it gives more room on the inside of the mute for the sound to resonate, so it doesn't make it sharp. Just like if you're change the pitch, you change the length of the tubing, right? So the sound really happens around here. Like, so if you start experimenting with different size plungers, can I toss this to you? I'm sure you're a better catch than I am. Good job. So that was kind of my first lesson. That was many years ago. And Clark was like, yeah, and he showed me his plunger. He had this big blue plunger. It's like, man, that's cool. So fast forward many years, I had found a toilet plunger that was a little bit bigger. It wasn't blue, but I found it in the hardware store in Brooklyn where I lived. And that's what I was using. And I was working with Winton, and Winton liked it. It's like, man, can you give me one of those? So I found a place where I got them, and I bought every one that they had, and I gave them all away. Gave one to Winton, one to Ryan, one to Marcus, the guys in the section. I gave them to other friends of mine. I was just like passing out, playing, hey man, this is a better mute. And everybody liked them. Well, like what happens with most hardware store bought toilet plungers, which are rubber, when they get older, they get hard and they crack. So Winton was using his for several years, and it got hard and it cracked, and he couldn't play closed plunger anymore. And he loves the sound of closed tight plunger. He writes for us with the symphonies and stuff. You know, so he loves that sound. He's like, man, can you find me another one of those? So I tried and couldn't find one. And I called the manufacturer. They're not making that size anymore. I'm like, shit, what are we gonna do? You know, and so I was talking to a buddy of mine, Ed Hirschman, that we played together in high school, the McDonald's All-American High School marching band and jazz band, and you know, and we remained friends all these years. And he's a great trumpet player, but Ed went to college for mechanical engineering, and he got his master's degree in marketing. But he's still a great trumpet player. And it's like, Ed, you know, can you check? He lives in Princeton, New Jersey. I said, Ed, can you check your hardware stores in Princeton? See if you can find a bigger size plunger for Winton. And Ed's like, well, let's just make one. Make one? I have no idea what that entails. I'm a trumpet player. And Ed said, no, man, send me something so I can have something to base it on. So I sent him Winton's plunger. Ed took it, he scanned it into his computer, and then he sent me a picture of it. He said, all right, well, how would you want to tweak this? You want to change this, you know, actually design it. And so, you know, toilet plunger doesn't have a lip like this to hold it so it doesn't fall out of your fingers, you know, which I had happen on a gig one time. I was playing outdoors and it was hot and sweaty, and I threw my plunger out into the audience by accident. It slipped out of my hand. I said, well, let's put a little handle there, because there are some plungers that people make for trumpet that had something similar, and I was like, I kind of like that idea. And I said, you know, Clark Terry said, you know, put a coin on the inside so you can change a timbre, you know, and so we came up with this butterfly valve, you know, and we had a few different designs for how to do that. You know, this made the most sense. Use a couple pennies. What's cheaper than two cents? 1 cent. You know, the little bar, we raise it on there, you know, so it's a butterfly valve so you can open and close it, you know, and then you take all the, you know, things you got to screw the handle, you know, the wooden handle that comes with the plunger in there, take all those ridges out so the air can flow a little more freely, smooth out the inside, you know, during certain things. And then we came up with a design. And then the next step was Ed had a friend who had a 3D printer. So we had somebody design the file for us to start 3D printing it. We probably did, I don't know, a dozen different sizes and started testing for pitch. So let me grab this one here. This is the second one we designed. This is the first one. This one is mine. I gotta make sure I don't leave it here because I need it tomorrow. So this is the first one. So we started trying out different size plungers to test for pitch. What affects the pitch? The circumference of it, how big it is that way, the length of it, how tall it is, you know, and all those things affect the pitch, we found out. You know, so if you check out, we wanted one that played in tune. Because like I said, Winton writes for tight plunger, and we're sitting in orchestras with the oboe section behind us, playing in unison with them. We're playing tight plunger, and most plungers are really, really sharp, and it's really a challenge. And you know, and if you play a plunger solo, man, anybody ever play a plunger solo on the trumpet? By the end of it, your chops are sore because you're lipping notes constantly. So I wanted to find something that we could actually play in tune when we played tight plunger. So this is what we came up with, was this size. So it's in tune through the entire range of the horn. So you do effects like, you know, you can get effects really easily with it and that are actually in tune. And then if I have to play, it actually plays well. It plays well as a mute, tight plunger. So that was the first thing, get something to play in tune, you know. And then the next thing was the feel of it. You know, some plungers are actually hard and they kind of clank against your bell when you play them, hard rubber. I didn't want that. I don't want something to clank, you know, sounds like metal hitting metal. You know, I wanted something that was soft enough where it's not going to make a noise on the mic when you do this. You know, you don't hear what you can hear when I'm not playing. So with a harder material, you do hear that a little bit. So that was another thing, and I like it to be a little pliable. You know, I like to be able to squeeze it. You know, maybe it's psychological, but I feel like that affects the sound sometimes. you know, you can do all kinds of things and get gritty with it, you know. So that was the next thing. So there's the size, there's the feel of it. So this is actually silicone. So it's a form of rubber, but from what I understand, this is going to last a lot longer than your standard rubber plunger. It's not going to get hard and crack. The material of it just ages well. So I wanted something that's going to last longer, you know, which maybe is a poor design thing, you know, want to sell more of them, so I wanted to go, but no, I want a plunger that is going to last and that's going to be good. And the other, you know, one of the other things is the color of it, Clark Terry. Snooky Young, you know, I wanted to make it blue in tribute of them. Those are two of my heroes. I knew them both. They were two of my idols and mentors, and you know, so wanted to pay tribute to them. So we made them blue. So that's, you know, in a nutshell, that's kind of how we came up with this. We had, like I said, probably a dozen different sizes, tested for pitch, tried all kinds of different things. We made this, I play a big bell. This is almost 5.5 inches. This bell size, so it fits fine on this bell. But if you gave me a Bach 37, it'll fit that as well, because we have a lip in here that's big enough where it will seal on just about any trumpet bell, unless you have like a really old funky horn with a super small bell. There are a handful of bells I've seen where it won't fit because it's too big for those. But a Bach 37, any standard trumpet, this size will fit. So we 3D printed all these sizes, settled on the size that I like the most, and you know, and when we're doing this, you know, I wasn't thinking about selling them. I was never thinking about selling these mutes. Ed was. He didn't tell me that. You know, and you know, we put a little bit of money into it, doing the 3D design and the 3D printer and all that stuff, you know. And Ed came in one day and said, you know, Kenny, we're going to sell these. I'm like, what do you mean? You know, no, man, I just want to make a better mute. He's like, no, man, we need to sell them, man. People are going to like them. I'm like, well, I mean, if we can make our money back, you know, okay, cool. But I wasn't at all thinking about making any money in designing this plunger. I just wanted a better mute. I didn't want to have to lip every note I'm playing with an oboe playing in my ear, sitting behind me, and kill my chops lipping notes, you know. And you know, Winton is my friend and my boss, and I wanted to make something that he would dig, you know. So Ed said we should sell, and I said, okay, well, if we can make our money back, cool, let's go ahead and do it. So the next step in the process was to design a mold to be able to inject with rubber to be able to have rubber plungers. So Ed designed, again with a 3D printer designer, a mold. And then with the mold, they're basically plastic. This is 3D printed, so it's plastic, right? So the mold was plastic, and it lasted for maybe 12 to 15 plungers before it started to wear out. So we made 12, 15 rubber plungers of this size, and I just gave them to friends of mine in the community. But not just friends of mine, Wynton Marsalis, Ryan Kaiser, Randy Brecker, guys in New York that are friends of mine, colleagues of mine, people that I know that I work with who play plunger and who could give me feedback. Earl Gardner, if anybody knows Earl, he's one of my best friends. Glenn Drews, quite a few people. And most of the people really liked it. There was a handful of people, and Wynton was one of them, who was like, Wynton came back and said, man, it's too big. And I just looked at him and said, well, Wynton, consider this. Maybe what you're used to is too small. And he kind of looked at me like I was crazy at first, and then he's like, maybe. But this is Wynton Marsalis, you know, and I had to respect his opinion on it, although he'd only played like 4 or 5 notes, and he said it out, no, it's too big, man. Like, well. But a couple, Glenn Drews, and another person, a great trumpet player in New York named Jamie Dauber. I don't know if any of you know Jamie. Does mostly Broadway work. She plays in the band led by Sherry Miracle called Diefes. It's an all-female jazz big band. She's a wonderful trumpet player, and she's really short, and she's got small hands and short arms. I'm not saying that to make fun of her, but it's big in her hand, you know. So, and she was like, man, it's too big. I can barely reach, you know. So it was enough people said something about the size of it to make me want to make something a little bit smaller. So we came up with this size for Winton. Actually, Ryan Kaiser as well. Felt like it was a little big. So we designed another one. Went through the same process and came up with this size, which is still more in tune than any plunger I think I've played on the market, but it does go a little high, the pitch. You hear the pitch goes up a little bit. It goes up just a little bit. So as opposed to that's pretty much straight down the middle with this one. So, but it's not so out of tune that it really bothers me that much. And if it means that Winton's going to get behind it and Glenn Drews and Jamie Dauber and Kaiser, it was worth it to make another size. So, you have to pay a certain amount of money to make a metal mold once you settle on the design. So these are the first two mutes we designed. And so once we had them designed, then we had to find somebody to make them for us, to make the mold for us, the metal mold. And so we went through that whole process. We found somebody and started making them. Then we started pre-orders, and like I told Ed, I said, I'm down to sell it if we can make our money back, that'd be cool. We made our money back the first day of pre-sales on these mutes, because I was sharing the process on Facebook, which is a great way of advertising, I found. I've never thought of it like that, but it's really, we've never bought an ad in a magazine or a newspaper or made a video or anything like that professionally. It's all been through social media, Facebook, Instagram. And the very first day of pre-sales, we made our money back. It's like, oh shit, this is cool. And so we put them out, man, and they've been doing well, man. They're selling all over the world. We've got the Count Basie Orchestra as an endorser, the Duke Ellington Orchestra, the Glenn Miller Orchestra. The military bands in the States all use them, the Airmen of Note, the Army Blues, the Jazz Ambassadors, although they're not official endorsers because they can't, because there's a military thing. Jazz and Lincoln Center Orchestra, obviously. And all kinds of, if you look on our website, we got testimonials and endorsers from Arturo Sandoval, from Alex Sipiagin to Mike Rodriguez to Randy Brecker, all kinds of, Thomas Gonch, James Morrison. We sent him a mute, and it took about 2.5 months to get here because of the mail service was just such a drag. But he apparently loves a mute. I've never met Mr. Morrison. I've gone down the rabbit hole and listened to, watch him on YouTube, more nights than I can count. Think the world of him, man. He's one of the baddest trumpet players to ever play the instrument, man. He's phenomenal. And I understand, like, his main instrument's trombone from what I hear. It's pretty sick. I'm hoping to meet him. I know he lives somewhere around here. I sent him a message, but I haven't heard back from him. And Carl Schauger's a good friend of mine. He sent him a message on my behalf too. If any of you know him, man, please tell him I said hi. Tell him I'd love to meet him. Is he's out of town? Okay. Okay. But anyways, a friend of mine came here and saw him in concert several months ago, and he was using this. And in fact, he spoke about it on the mic to the audience, spoke about the plunger and a little bit about the history of the plunger and why he likes this mute, which means the world to me. But we got some of the greatest players in the world playing this mute now, and it's really pretty exciting. And it really started as a project just because Winton came and said, hey, my plunger's cracked, can you find me a new one? And it just happened, and this process started before COVID hit, but then COVID hit while we were kind of finalizing the design, and then we came out with it during COVID, and it really kind of got me through COVID. It was such a dark time, and I know you guys went through it here, man. You had 8 shutdowns or something here, man. It's crazy. What the whole world went through, and it was a challenging time for me personally, man. I won't get into all my personal stuff, but it was a challenging time in many, many ways. And what got me through it was dealing with this, man. With this plunger, it gave me something positive to look forward to every day, and to know that I can, affect the world in a positive way somehow from the confines of my apartment online. Making little videos and stuff. So it was a fun process. We put these out, and everybody seems to really dig them. Winton loves it, you know, and so then the trombone players in our band came to me. Said, man, what about us? You know, so like, well, so we're still in COVID at this point, you know, and you know, the way we got through COVID with Lincoln Center Orchestra is we went and had a meeting once a week. Every Thursday at I think 1 o'clock, we would get on and do a Zoom meeting with the whole band so we could kind of keep in touch. We did a few of those Brady Bunch style recordings, you know, the remote recordings with the band back then, you know, just to kind of keep everybody engaged. But the trombone section saw you know, I'd sent plungers to all the trumpet players, and trombone's like, man, come on. So I started going through the same process with trombones. I actually bought myself a P-bone. You guys know what that is?
Yeah.
The classic. So I bought one of those, and I got a mouthpiece, and I, you know, started practicing a little bit to the point where I can get a decent sound. And so I went through the same process and developed the trombone one. Then when we went through the, you know, 15 testers, I reached out to Wycliffe Gordon and Ed Neumeister and Art Barron and all the guys in our band, Elliot Mason, Vince Gardner, Chris Crenshaw, Clark Gayton, like 15 different great jazz trombone players who all played plunger, and did the same thing. You know, it was COVID, but people were starting to get together. We kept our distance. We wore masks, you know, when we were close, and when we were far away, and he was testing, and I was, you know, 10 feet away from him, you know, so it was. They were testing the different sizes, and I was taking notes, and you know, came down with the size that's over there that we call it Big Blue. That's it, you know, for the trombone. So that was the third mute that we developed, and we're actually working on another size for trombone right now. We're working with a very well-known trombone player, and it's going to be named after that person once we finalize it. I can't say who it is yet, it's top secret, but we're gonna have a second size for the trombone as well. So then the next mute we developed was this. Anybody ever see this one? Anybody ever play it? This is a fun mute to play.
Wow.
It's a lot of fun, man. This is, we call it the Chicago Stinger. Now Ed was checking out a thing I was doing at Dizzy's Club in New York. With my septet, and I'd written a suite of music based on music I'd written for a play in New York. And in this suite, I was using a mute called the Chicago, which was a 2-piece mute. It was a buzz mute, little tiny buzz mute, you know, like the size of a pixie mute, and a metal plunger that went over it. And it was something that came out, I think, in the 30s. And it's just a really unique sound, you know, and it had a kazoo filter in it, and you know, it was a different kind of sound. It was fun, you know. And Ed Hirschman, this is before we did the plunger. Ed watched me online on a live stream, and he called me the next day and said, man, what the hell was that mute you were playing? So I told him about it. He said, can you take a picture? So I took a picture of it and I sent it to him. He said, no, take a picture of it next to a ruler. I want to see the dimensions. Not realizing, you know, not thinking Ed is an engineer and he wants to try and make one of these, right? Well, that's what he wanted. So he did. He made one, and it was pretty bad. But he put, you know, I didn't really help him with it at all. He did it and came up with it, and he started selling it through his website, you know, and it wasn't very good. So, you know, I won't talk about that too much, but in developing this one, you know, Ed started to see my passion for mutes. I'm a mute nerd, you know. So after we got these out there and did the trombone one, Ed's like, well, what next? I said, man, let's fix your buzz mute that you made, because it sucks. So we went back to the drawing board and started over the whole process that we went through with this, we did with this. We tried different designs. We tried 1 filter, we tried 2, we tried 3, we tried different kind of caps, and we came up with this design. We tried different kinds of corking systems, a straight cut versus the angle cut that we ended up with. All these things make a difference in the sound and the pitch. You know, because has anybody played any other buzz mutes? They're all terrible. Every one of them. They've been making buzz mutes since the 20s. And I've experimented with every one that I could find. I've played just about all of them, I think, and they're all awful. They get an effect that's kind of cool, you know, but as mutes, there's no stability to the pitch, to the sound, you know, so I wanted to try and improve upon that. So we came up with this, you know, so you want to play. through the meat of the horn and have stability and pitch. That was the first thing. And it's tricky because you've got 3 membranes in here. You know, so they're not going to have the same kind of stability that plastic has. This is 3D printed. So you got to find the right balance. It's pretty good. The stability of the pitch and the sound, the buzz goes through all registers. You know, so we spent a lot of time. We spent like a year working on this one. And, you know, again, it's the mute nerd in me. And a lot of fun, and it's especially a lot of fun when you use it with a plunger. You can get all kinds of cool. You know, you get some different kind of sounds, you know. So I've had a lot of fun playing this mute, and I've recorded with it, and you know, I mentioned one of my gigs at Sesame Street. I use this on Sesame Street all the time. The writer for the show, who writes all the charts for us, loves this mute. You know, so Abby Kadabi comes out and you know, has a special lick that I play with this mute. You know, so we've had a lot of fun in developing that. So of course, on the trombone's like, hey, don't forget about us. So we got one for the trombone too. We worked on that, and it's slightly different. But this was a process, man, because at first we were blowing out the filters. If you take this off and you screw this off, you can see there's a little kazoo filter in there. You know, we were buying the kazoo filters at first, but they were blowing out. You know, so like we got a different material to make them out of, and we actually make our own kazoo filters. You know, and it's a sturdier material, and it's still got a really good buzz to it. You know, so we've got these, and we've got these to seal them down with, and we put this design on here to protect it in case you got a pencil in your case so it can't poke a hole. But part of the reason they're blown out was because all the air going through here was so powerful that it was blowing them out anyways. So we came up with this design on the inside, which is an air diffuser basically. So it diffuses the air, so it goes through, it doesn't blow out the filters. And you know, and some of the air gets channeled through these, you know, so some of the air comes out, so you still get a little bit of the natural sound of the horn. Man, we spent a lot of time developing this thing, you know, and you know, we bought a 3D printer so we can make them ourselves. You know, we invested in that, and it took a little more time, but it eventually paid for itself in terms of the design and buying the 3D printer, which in the long term, you know, is going to save us a little bit of money, I think. You know, but this has been a lot of fun to use, and I use it on solos on the road sometimes. But one thing with it is, because it's plastic, it's 3D printed, it doesn't project as well as other mutes, like metal mutes. You know, metal mutes project great. Plastic mutes, you know, if you're playing with a big band, you got a solo, the band comes in with backgrounds and the band is roaring, you got the whole brass section and saxophones playing the background while you're playing a solo using this, it's a challenge to play over that. So I was talking to a friend of mine who he's an aero engineer and designs airplanes. And his daughter is a terrific young trumpet player named Summer Camargo. I don't know if anybody has heard of Summer. She's playing trumpet. She's a trumpet player on Saturday Night Live now. She's still a student at Juilliard. But I met Summer when she was a freshman in high school. You know, and I gave her a lesson and kind of mentored her, as did Marcus Printup. And her dad is, you know, just the nicest guy in the world. And I was talking to him, and I gave him one of these to give to Summer as a gift. And he came to me, you know, I was talking to him about it, and he said, oh, interesting, it's plastic, 3D printed, huh? And he knew exactly what goes into that. And I said, yeah, I said, I'd love to be able to make them out of metal to see how that would sound, how it would change the projection of it, because that was an issue for me, is I wanted to project better, but, you know, I don't have access to a metal 3D printer. And he said, well, I know somebody. Like, oh shit, okay, well, you know, let me know. So 6 months later, he called me up. He's like, Kenny, yeah, I got a guy who's willing to do this for you. I said, well, what's he gonna charge? He said, no, man, it's gratis. I'm happy to do it for you. You've been so nice to my daughter. And, you know, so he came up with this metal version,
wow.
which is not quite the same design. The threading is a little bit different. We actually have to thread this with a machine as opposed to just 3D printing it. So the threading on the caps and the threading on this part is machine, you know. But the difference in sound, check this out. All right, that's good. That's pretty good, man. You can get mean with this mute. Now, this is also 3D printed. It's metal. And to produce this is going to cost about $350 for us to make the mute. So to sell it, you know, who's going to pay more than that for a mute? Not too many people. Not too many people can afford it, you know. So we're going to have a handful of them made and, you know, see if there's anybody out there who wants to special order them. You know, I know a few trumpet players who make a good enough living where they can afford to pay $350 for a mute. We're going to give it to them at cost. It's, you know, it's a really cool mute. It's really fun to play. And you want to talk about like when you use a plunger with it. It's a whole different level, you know. And this is a sound that hasn't really happened before. So this is not out yet, but I'm pretty excited about it.
Can you interchange the parts with the plastic one?
You know what?
Can you interchange the parts? Like,
Yeah, you can.
Oh, wow.
But
yeah.
this is, I've done that, and I've experimented a little bit with that. With the first version of this, you could, but we've changed the threading on it because it's machine thread. This is not standard size threading on this one, so I can't with these two.
Yeah.
But with the first one of these, I could.
Uh,
You know, but I like it all metal. It's, you know, it'd be a little bit cheaper to make them that way, but man, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it right, or I'm not going to do it. You know, that's just my nature. You know, so that's one that's in progress. One other thing that we've been working on that's a lot of fun for me. Now you asked about the penny, right?
Yeah.
The positioning of the penny. So when I play the plunger without an undermute, I'm going to refer to them as undermutes from now on instead of pixie mutes. Pixie mutes is a term that came out of a certain time in America where certain people are offended by using the term pixie, just like Dixie. You know, it's a certain word that is offensive to some people, so I'm going to stop using that term I'm just going to call it an undermute. We actually have we're developing a new one. But when I play without an undermute, I keep it in the open position because I want as much sound to come out of here as possible. That's open. This is closed. So it's much softer, and which is good for some things, but when it's open plunger, you know, I like to be able to get that harmomute kind of vibe. You can also get a certain effect just with your middle finger over the hole, where you can't get that if it's in the closed position.
You
Now,
do that pointed toward the saxophone section?
always. Always.
Excellent.
If I'm using an undermute, I put it in the closed position because you get more effect from the wah, right? So, and one thing that I discovered in developing this mute, in order to make it play in tune, we had to make it bigger, right? And so because it's bigger, you don't need to use the little pixie mute. Who's ever used those little pixie mutes? You know, the little Humes&Berg red and white pixie mutes? You guys know those mutes?
Yeah.
Some of you do. They play notoriously bad. They're really stuffy. They always told me to take, there's like a little tube on the inside of it that's soldered in. I was always told, in fact, I think Clark Terry told me this, take the tube out with a set of pliers. Otherwise it's too stuffy and it's not going to project, because a lot of stuff Duke Ellington wrote is for pep section where you got to play over an entire big band with the pixie mute in, with, you know, it's hard, man. You kill your chops doing that, you know. So, you know, it was, I just don't like those mutes. You take that plug out of there and then it plays super sharp, and you lose the bottom fifth of the horn completely. It's just gone, right? Has anybody done that experience? So trust me, you know. So, but the one beautiful thing about this is big enough it'll fit over a regular straight mute. You know, so you can actually fit it over regular straight mute, which I was using for a while, but regular straight mute is a different sound from a Pixie mute. You know, Pixie mute, those were cornet mutes made in I think the 1920s by Kahn, for Kahn cornets. They came with a Kahn cornet when you bought it. And Duke Ellington's band started using them because they could fit a plunger over it. You know, and that's what they used for all that pep section stuff, and that, you know, Cootie Williams and
The Sweets use that same sort of thing when he was doing that?
Sweets used mostly Harmon-mute, man. Did he? I don't know. Sweets
Because I
used a
see
lot of
him with
plunger.
a cup, and he was using it like.
That was one of those Shasta cup mutes that it was actually a cup mute that he
And
just
you
dialed
did
it
it
down.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Snooki used to do that too,
Right.
you know. But
What kind of straight is that?
this is Charlie Davis.
All right.
You guys hip to Charlie?
Yeah.
Sure.
Charlie's a dear friend of mine. I call him Uncle Charlie, man. I've known him since I was a kid, man. But this is my favorite straight mute. I love this straight mute. So I was using this, but it's a different sound. You know, the Pixie mute has a certain nasal quality to it. This is a pretty, you know, it's a pretty full, you know, good sounding straight mute. It doesn't have that Pixie nasal quality.
Yeah.
So I got this, Dennis Wick, and this is for D, E flat trumpet. It's got a little more of that nasal, smaller, but it also plays in tune. So you can hear it's got a little more of a nasal quality to it. So I was using this instead of the Pixie mutes, but the Pixie mute is still a little more nasally. It has a certain quality that people like, you know, and first I was like, man, throw your Pixie mutes away, you don't need them, but actually there's a quality to that sound that has a place. And so Ed and I were talking about that, and Ryan Kaiser turned to me about 6 months ago in a rehearsal, and he's using one of those old doorknob mutes from the 20s, you know, the one Kahn made for the cornets. And it goes super far inside the bell. It's got these kind of funky corks that sit in it, and he uses that. It's stuffy, but it's got that sound. It's stuffy, out of tune. You got to tune your horn, and certain notes are going to be out of tune, and you lose the bottom of the horn, all that stuff. But he likes the sound. And Ryan turned to me in rehearsal one day, and he's like, man, you got to develop a Pixie mute next. I'm like, okay, I can think about it. So I talked to Ed, you know, wheels start spinning. So these are the first generation prototypes for our new Pixie. Anybody ever see a trombone Pixie mute? It's a really long mute that goes far inside the bell. So we're developing these now. This is the best one, but these are 3D printed, and it cracked while I was traveling, so I taped it up. But you know, you can see the bottoms of them are different sizes. So this is the first generation of the prototypes that we're testing for pitch. And we've also got corks on here that there's Velcro. So you pull the cork off and you put it wherever you want on your horn instead of having to file the corks or change different size corks to fit your bell or whatever. You can actually move the positioning. So I think we may put that out like that. I don't know. We're messing around with it. We're having fun. But it's a little bit closer to that traditional. It's a little more nasally. This one is more so, but it's taped because it's broken. I just crunched a little more. You hear that? So it's, yeah. So this is what we're getting to, and you know, so we want to have a good Pixie mute that's free blowing, that plays in tune down to the bottom of the horn. It plays pretty easy, plays in tune, and you can. You want to be able to get that ya-ya sound out of it. So this is the next one we're working on, is a Pixie mute. So we've had a lot of fun developing these mutes, man. It's you know, something to do in my free time, if there was such a thing. Yeah, that's more or less it on the mutes. it's just been a lot of fun developing these, man, and coming up with sounds, you know, that people haven't heard before. Nobody's heard this sound before. This is a new sound, and it's in tune, you know. And you know, I'm hoping, you know, are you guys familiar with what's his name, Tom Houghton?
Hooten, yeah.
Houghton.
Yeah.
I've heard it pronounced Houghton. I've never asked him how to pronounce it. I just call him Tom. But plays principal trumpet with the LA Philharmonic.
Yeah. He calls himself Hooten. So.
Does he call himself Houghton? Okay, cool. Good to know. Thank you. So I'm learning from you. He's just the nicest guy. He's such a sweetheart, man. And he was actually using this for a modern classical piece. You know, and if we can get more classical players start playing these mutes, Gabor guy, he was playing with the Berlin Philharmonic. He was a principal trumpet there. What's his last name?
I'll think about that.
Yeah. And he's another. I don't even know how to say his last name, but he's another friend. I met him many years ago when I first joined Wynton's band. My first gig was with the Berlin Philharmonic with Sir Simon Rattle playing a piece that Wynton wrote. He was the principal trumpet. We became friends, and every time he lives, I think, near Vienna now. I think he teaches out there. But every time we're out there, he comes and hangs at the bar all night. He's a great guy, but he's like messing around with these mutes. So I would love to see these, quote, jazz mutes start to cross over into the classical realm. You know, sort of like modern new pieces, have people start writing for them. You know, now we have mutes that actually it's a good buzz mute that plays in tune. You can actually write music for. A Harmon mute, they're using this in the LA Philharmonic. Tom bought a set of them for the section. So this is being used in a couple different symphonies where they've been using these plunger mutes now. They don't have much call for plunger mute, you know, but when they do, this is what they're using in some pretty serious orchestras, you know, and who knows, maybe a composer will come along and hear, hey, that plunger isn't ugly and out of tune when you play closed plunger. You know, maybe someone starts to write some new modern music. Wynton actually did. Wynton wrote a trumpet concerto recently. It was premiered by a trumpet player in the States. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Then it was played again in Europe. Again, I'm drawing a blank. You all know this guy. Legit player. Great classical player. Anyways, but you know, it's starting to.
Aachen-Hardenberger?
Yeah, yeah. So anyways, you know, I would love to have these mutes start to change the way people perceive these mutes, and it shouldn't just be used for jazz, but if it is used for jazz, man, I've always played a lot of plunger, and I can play plunger solo now without killing my chops for the rest of the gig. You know, so that's the main thing that I wanted to talk about today with you guys. And there's a lot of different things I can talk about. We're almost at an hour already. Anybody have any questions, man? Anybody got any questions for me? Yeah.
Got any stories about Snooky Young, or any advice that he gave you, or any?
I don't have too many about Snooky. I didn't know Snooky well. My dad played with him in Las Vegas. I grew up in Vegas, and he was always just really nice, really friendly. And man, what a swinging trumpet player. He's probably my all-time favorite lead trumpet player. The work he did with Basie, he's just so swinging with such a beautiful tone, you know, and not only as a lead trumpet player, as a soloist too. People overlook that side of his playing a lot of times, but there's some YouTube videos out there. There's one of him with the Basie band doing Little Darlin', where he stretches and he plays the solo in the middle, and then he keeps blowing over the head all the way to the end. It's killing. Look that up on YouTube, man. There's one of him doing with the Tonight Show band. Tain't what you do is the way how you do it. You know that one?
Yeah, right.
It's great, man. He locks like a double B flat at the end, one-handed with a plunger in his hand. You know? But yeah, I love Snooky, man, and I met him several times, and he was always really encouraging and really cool, really nice. But I didn't know him as well as I knew Clark Terry a little bit better, you know. But he was super cool, man. You know.
Is Earl Gardner still doing Saturday Night Live?
No. Earl left. Yeah, Summer took over last season, I think. Earl left the gig.
Is he okay? Or?
He's good, yeah.
Right.
He's still playing on Broadway. He's doing the show Chicago
Okay.
on Broadway. Him and Glenn Drews are the trumpets on that.
They're my best friends.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah, man, Earl's, man, I love him, man. He's such a great guy.
Because a few years ago, I went to New York and he took me on the set.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he took me on there, too.
And all that. It was
Yeah.
great. He knows everybody well.
Oh, yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's the best, man.
Yeah.
I first met Earl when I first moved to New York. I was given an opportunity to play in a big band led by Charlie Persett. He was a great drummer, played with Dizzy Gillespie, and I played in Charlie's band, and Earl came in, played lead with the band. That's where I first met him, and then we started working together with the Mingus Big Band, and he started getting me into sub on the Vanguard Band, and we went on tour, did long tours with the Mingus Band, long tours of Europe, and played on George Grunt's big band together, and we spent a lot of time on the road together, Earl and I, and we became very close friends, and we still are.
Yeah.
And his wife Cecilia, she's great too, man.
Yeah.
Great people, man. But Earl's still on the scene, doing his thing, man.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Is Joe Randazzo, is he around still, or did he die?
I don't know.
You didn't know Joe, the bass drummer?
I know his name, but
Yeah.
I never knew him.
Thank you so much. I gotta go pick up my son. Sorry.
All right, say hi to your son. Tell him to play his long tones.
Yes, Mama.
Okay.
Still.
Get him a trumpet. So,
Anyway, we'll talk at dinner, but, you know,
Yeah.
I have so many questions about the guys.
yeah,
Because I'm from New York, Connecticut.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool, man.
it's been a while.
Yeah, cats are still out there doing it, man. Earl's playing great. You know, in fact, I gotta get together with him for dinner soon, man. I'll tell you later. But his wife was like very helpful for me in a very specific way recently, man. I was having some health issues, and she really hooked me up with a great doctor who solved my problems and improved my life. So
Yeah.
good people, man. Yeah.
With Clark Terry, just thinking how he always used circular breathing even when not needed, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Do you muck around with that, or like, because other people, I know James Morrison clearly has.
Yeah.
Does it mean anything other than holding a long note tone?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's nothing. I used to mess around with it when I was a kid, when I was like 15, 16 years old, and kind of learned how to do it, but I couldn't do it without puffing my cheeks. And I never got good enough at it to, you know, I think in high school one time I did a solo where I played like 4 choruses on a blues where I just held one note the whole time, and I thought it was fun. You know, but, you know, that's the extent of it for me. But I mean, Clark could really do it. Winton can too. You know, there are guys who can do it and really do it well and play music. Sergei Nakaryakov. Have you ever checked him out? Classical player. Man, yeah, he is
I thought
unbelievable.
recording with him at 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
Just badass.
Yeah, he's been a badass since he started, I think. I talked to him one time during COVID. There's another Russian trumpet player I mentioned earlier, Alex Sipiagin, who's a good friend of mine. And Alex called me up and said, "Hey man, my friend Sergey wants to meet you, man. He's like, he doesn't play any jazz, but he's a classical player, but he loves jazz, and he's kind of infatuated by it. He wants to meet jazz trumpet players." And I said, "You're a Russian trumpet player named Sergey?" I said, "Is it?" He said, "Yeah." I'm like, "Holy shit!" You know, I first heard about him when he was probably 13 or 14 from Lou Soloff, who was a good friend of mine. Lou told me about Sergey, and so Alex put together a Zoom call, man. You know, and it was me and Alex and Randy Brecker and Sergey and a couple other guys. And you know, first thing I asked Sergey, I was like, "Well, you know, you play classical music, so you know you play C trumpet, D trumpet, you know, all these E flat trumpet." He's like, "No, I just play B flat."
I've only ever seen him play the B.
He plays B flat trumpet and flugelhorn, and that's it. He does like the cello suites on flugelhorn and whatever else. And I didn't know that, you know. So I asked him, you know, coming up, you know, did you study, you know, like a lot of young trumpet players, worked out of method books, you know, and you know, Clark Technical Studies or Schlossberg for flexibility or the Arbenz book, all these different books that we all you know, many of us studied out of. He said, no, I never worked out of those. I just started playing music. Wow. He's never, it's just, he's like probably the most gifted trumpet player to ever live, you know. And then I was like, well, what are you doing during COVID? You know, he wanted to know about us, but we all ended up picking his brain, you know. And I said, what are you listening to? Well, we're all secluded, we're all quarantined in our homes. You know, what music are you listening to? He's like, man, I'm just enjoying the silence. Mm-hmm. He wasn't listening to music. He was really, truly, he was enjoying not having to work on the next concerto or the next piece or the next tour. Because this guy tours the world playing original music, or, you know, all the time. He's always working on something. So he was enjoying not having to do that. You know, he's an interesting guy, man. He was really cool. I was really glad to get to meet him, man. I haven't met him in person yet. That was one of the highlights of the pandemic for me. I was good to talk with Sergey. Good dude. Anybody else got any questions? Yeah.
What are some influential solos that you studied when you were younger that informed you how to play the plunger and get your technique up, like artists and solos?
Well, my biggest influence when I was young and started playing plunger was my trumpet teacher, a guy named Walter Blanton, out in Las Vegas where I grew up. Walt was a Bill Adams student. Anybody familiar with Bill Adams? Bill Adams routine? My first trumpet teacher was Tommy Perello, who you've all heard, whether you realize it or not. You ever heard the song Sweet Caroline? Ba, ba, ba. That's Tommy Perello. Oh yeah. What's the name of that record he did with Woody? They called him like at 2:30 in the morning. They said, can you fly out to LA tomorrow to make this record? Dave Stahl had been playing lead and left the band for whatever reason. He came in and side read the date, you know, and just killed it. Tommy's a monster, and he's still around, still in Vegas, still playing. I just saw him recently. I was out there a few weeks ago and hung out with him. Oh yeah, he was my first trumpet teacher. Wow. You know, and Tommy focused on fundamentals, man. We worked out of Arvin's book, and that was his thing, you know. And then later I got with Walt Blanton, and I studied with him at a summer camp is when I first met him. And in order to be able to pay for the camp, because my family didn't have a lot of money, I worked in the kitchen. That was my job, was washing dishes and setting tables and all that kind of stuff. And then at night, the kitchen staff, we slept up outside of all the, you know, the cabins where all the students stayed. We participated as students as well, but we had to leave to go do the dishes. So I was up there, and it was a practice room. My room where I slept was a room next to like a recital hall. And Walt Blanton would go in there and he would practice at night. And so I lay there going to sleep, and I would hear like the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard on the trumpet, and, you know, playing classical stuff, you know, playing the Telemann on the piccolo, or the Brandenburg, or whatever. I mean, he could do anything. He played lead trumpet on shows in Vegas, but he loved the plunger. And so sometimes I go up there and I just hear him playing the blues, man, on the plunger. And just like the most soulful shit I'd ever heard in my life. It's like, wow, that's so cool. I want to learn how to do that. So I would just lay in bed, you know, listening to Walt play the blues at night. You know, and that was my first real big influence on the plunger, was him, you know. And I studied with him that summer, and then I started, the next year was starting my junior year in high school. And he taught through an organization, it was at the time called SNISMS, which stood for Southern Nevada Summer Music School. It was a summer thing, but then they expanded and they rebranded and called it Nevada School of the Arts, and they're still in existence today. And Walt taught trumpet through Nevada School of the Arts. It was all high school kids. It was a high school program, after school program. And Walt said, I want you to study with me. And he worked it out, got me a scholarship because he knew my family had no money. And I started studying with him my junior year in high school. And he saw me as a young artist, where I'd never seen myself as that. He saw me as that. And he, for my 16th birthday, he took me to a record store and he bought me basically the history of jazz trumpet. Bought me like 10 records. Records are these things they used to put on record would play music, like CDs.
Back in the 3D printer, right?
So he bought me 10 records like of the history of jazz trumpet, you know, starting with Louis Armstrong up through, you know, covering Freddie Hubbard and Miles Davis and Clark Terry and Kenny Wheeler, Don Cherry, you know, just really covering the bases, and said, I want you to listen to them in this order, you know, and so I did, you know, and then he started making me tapes. I really loved Miles. That was my first, like, my favorite. Miles didn't play any plunger, but I really loved Miles, so he started making me tapes. On one side, he would put, like, kind of blue, and on the other side, he put ESP. So there'd be very different styles, very different eras of Miles, so I could hear the difference of how he evolved, you know, and I ended up getting probably Miles Davis's entire collection on cassette tapes that Walt made for me. You know, Clifford Brown was also in the mix, you know, and, but the first recorded plunger playing that like really just turned my head around was Oscar Peterson Trio +1 with CT. You know, Brotherhood of Man, that just that blew my mind, and I never looked back. I was like, holy shit, how does he do that? You know, and I always try to emulate that kind of sound, that kind of playing. I also checked out a lot of the stuff with Duke Ellington, you know, and I've always loved Count Basie's band. My dad was a musician, he used to play Basie records all the time. But that man, especially that track, Brotherhood of Man, you know. And then what's the other one? What's the name of the tune?
Blues, yeah.
Blues, yeah.
No, blues.
Anyways,
You get
that was probably what set me off
Yeah.
on the plunger journey more than anything, was that record. Yeah.
That's good, thanks.
Anybody else got any questions?
I was just coming from a trombone perspective. I read the old Al Gray plunger technique book.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you actually go into a lot of detail about modifying the pixie mood or the unreviewed, pulling out the insert. You know,
He talks about in the,
in the book. Yeah, it's pretty old now, but he talks about hand position. A, B, C, D. You know, positions of the left hand. Is that something you ever consider in your improvisations? How that, what your left hand does in terms of the sound you create?
Yeah, absolutely, but I don't think of them as being positions as much. And I've read that book. I remember I read it many years ago, and that's the only book I've ever seen about the plunger. Has anybody ever seen another book about playing plunger? Ed Hirschman and I are actually working on one. It's never been done. You know, shit. You know, and you know, he talks about the different positions. What do you see? There's like 5.
It sounds like, you know, A through E.
Yeah.
But opposed to O.
Yeah, so like 5 different positions.
And talk
But-
about how each of those has a different sound.
Yeah, they do. And I can see the point of that, but I think part of coming up with those 5 different positions is coming up with those in order to be able to write a book about it,
Yeah.
as opposed to just doing it and hearing it. For instance, you know, the you know, where you put the penny, it's a personal choice where you want to put your penny on this, you know, and I like, if I'm not using the mute, I like it in the open position because, you know, for the reasons I explained before, but, you know, one position he doesn't talk about is this. He's talking about everything is like your hand is like a hinge, like opening a door. This is another position. A lot of times, like if you play, doesn't matter what the plunger is, if you go from closed to open, there's a spot in there where it's gonna be swirly. It's impossible for it not to be. I'll do it real slow. Now, you gotta get through that so it doesn't happen, so you do it faster. So you move your hand a little faster. You know, you find ways around that. But go straight out, it's still got another sound. So there's all kinds of different things you can do. I generally play with, you know, I think it talks about it kind of being a hinge in that book, no?
It does, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I utilize. I kind of put my thumb behind here. You can't necessarily do that with the trombone, I don't think, but the trumpet, I put my thumb behind here and kind of do like that most of the time. So I feel where the edge is, so I can, because I want to be able to, when I play closed plunger, make sure there's a seal all the way around it so no air escape, so you can get that, you know, I want to get that buzz. You know, I love that sound. It's fun. You know, but in terms of thinking in positions, I don't really think about it, but I have done a lot of exercises, and this is going to be in the book. You know, just like anything else, man, when you're practicing your instrument, whether it's trumpet, trombone, or anything else, you gotta practice your fundamentals. You know, if you're a drummer, you gotta play your rudiments, man. You gotta shed, man. And playing with a plunger is a technique, man. This is the most versatile mute ever. Every other mute you just throw in, and that's the sound. You know, except for Harmon, it's got a wah. You know, but cut mute, you know, well, they're adjustable ones now, but in general, this one, you can get such a wide variety of sounds. The total landscape that you can create with the plunger mute is unlike anything else. You know, and I love that about it. So you want to get used to it, and it's not rocket science. You know, it started off with a toilet plunger. Let's be real, man. It's, you know, but it's a technique though. It's not just, you know, it's not just an effect. It's not just that. You know, you want to be able to actually have some technique, so you got to develop some coordination with your wrist. You know, so I do Clark studies with the plunger. Right? You start to figure out, you know, there's not a book about it, you know. Whatever you want to do. You know, I've created my own, and I just started doing them, and you start to develop the technique, and you start to get used to it, you know, and then you choose a song that you like, choose a favorite ballad, and you use the technique on it every note. Right? So you start to develop the technique and find the spots that are good and spots that aren't. So you got to move a little faster through that spot. It's like right in there that is not good. So you got to move a little faster through that spot, and then you can do whatever you want with it. You know, so there's a lot that you can do to develop the technique, but you got to do it. You know, buying a plunger isn't going to make you a better plunger player, but it's going to give you a shot at becoming a good plunger player if you're starting ground zero where the mute actually plays in tune for you. You know, and that was an issue for me my whole life. I love the effects of it. I love the sound of it. I love the feeling you get out of playing the plunger. But when you play close plunger and it's a quarter of a step sharp, man, that sucks. That's a drag. You know, so, you know, we came up with this little thing, and it's been working out nice, man.
Your hand position, do you recommend everybody should do the same, or whatever's comfortable?
Whatever's comfortable, whatever works for you, man. I've seen Lincoln do it like this. You know, I don't like that. I don't like the penny jamming into my finger. You know, I've seen Lincoln do it like this with his clothes and his finger under here. You know, that kind of gives you a different kind of grip. You know, I know how I like it. I like to do it with the penny shooting out. And that's one thing that's a drag for some players. Like up until now, the plunger didn't have a penny on here. Didn't have anything. Didn't grab it at any angle. It didn't matter. So that's one thing that I've gotten some feedback from some people. Like Ryan doesn't like the penny, so I made him one without. You know, but for me, it's no big deal. I just know how I set it down, and I grab it a certain way, and I'm good to go. You know, but we're gonna see what this next trombone mute is gonna be like. It may not have a penny, it may not even have a hole. It's gonna be up to the artists that we're working with what they like, and
Have you made any YouTube videos like about it?
not really. I mean, I made some Facebook videos, you know, when I was doing the process, you know, going through the process, and I had like 10 of them lined up on a table, and I was just sharing, you know, that was before they were on the market or anything, in terms of, you know, doing a lecture about plungers or anything like that. I haven't really done anything that way. Ed and I were doing a thing for a while where we were offering a discount for educational facilities, for schools. If they bought a set of 5 trumpet plungers and 5 trombone plungers, we would offer a free masterclass online, talking about plunger and plunger techniques and how to start to practice it, because nobody really knows. There's the one Al Gray book, and that's it. Nobody's really talked about it, and you know, so we've done some master classes that way, but I've never put anything out there on YouTube or anything. But you know, maybe we will when we do the book, you know, and get it out there, because I think it's good information, and you know, I think there needs to be information about all mutes, quite frankly. You know, my wife is a great trumpet player. Her name's Lisa Whitaker. She plays lead trumpet for a Broadway show called Some Like It Hot. She's lead trumpet with the Army Blues and with the Jazz Ambassadors and with the Smithsonian Band, with Diva. She's a total badass. She was telling me just yesterday a trumpet player came in and subbed on the second book and had a cup mute, and it was like a brand new cup mute. They'd never shaved the corks on, and you know, a lot of younger players don't know anything about mutes. You know, they don't know you're supposed to shave the corks on a cup mute, which to me is just, you know, you can't really call yourself a professional trumpet player if you don't know about that. That's just, you know, but it's information that nobody talks about. People don't know about it unless you have the right teacher who tells you to do that. You just buy it off the shelf and you stick it in, and it sticks out way too far, and you sound like shit. You know, so I think, you know, I think a book about mutes in general would. Oh, I'm sorry, I said we got a young person back there. Sorry, man. I'm gonna try not to curse. But I think there's a lot of information that needs to get out there about mutes, you know, in general. Because is anybody in here? Did anybody not know you're supposed to shave down your corks on your cup mutes? Okay, so there you go. You know, you need to shave them down. You know, if you have like these ones, if you look, this is for trombone, but you know, if you look at it, it's got these ridges along the side. And those ridges are there for a reason, because those ridges are supposed to go almost to the point where they're touching the bell. So in order to get them to the point where they do that, you got to shave down the corks. So when I say shave down, you use sandpaper. You know, and you do them equally on each cork, so it's the right size. So it gets down, and that's how you get the right sound out of that mute.
I used to even cut the ridges.
Huh?
I used to, those old.
Well, those old Ray Robinson ones were flat.
Flat, yeah.
You know, and so, and Humes and Berg had some that were flat as well, and some people just cut the ridges. And that's another sound.
Yeah.
I like that sound too.
Yeah.
I love the Ray Robinson cut mutes.
They're hard to find, though,
Yeah,
aren't
you gotta find them on eBay.
they?
But straight mutes you gotta shave down the corks so it plays down to the bottom of the horn in tune, because they'll be out of tune until you do that. They're gonna play sharp on you. You know, so you gotta shave them down and get them inside the bell far enough so you can play down low F sharp on the trumpet, so it's in tune. So you gotta do that with all the mutes. They all got their own things. These mutes here, where is it? This one. Is this one you're talking about, Ed? It's got interchangeable corks. So that's a pretty cool design. This is a 3D printed mute, Tectone mutes, which I'm just kind of getting hip to. But they have a new. Oh, this is yours. These are cool. It's a pretty new technology, I think, where you actually can change the corks up. Can you tell us about these a little bit? Yeah, man. I think that's a great technology. You know.
So these are 3D printed, and this is actually a Ray Robinson copy. But the corks come out. There's a slot in the side of the mute, and so they come with 3 different heights of corks. Well, not they're rubber, but you can just put them in, and get them right, and then you can swap them between your instruments.
That's cool. So you don't have to actually shave them down. You don't have to file them down.
No, and if it wasn't the right thickness, I can make them to whatever you want.
That's cool.
I think there's a little card there. If that's a bit, oops, but those are a bit high. If you want to put a smaller one,
Yeah. So how's it come out?
just.
Okay. There we go. Okay.
Just try.
This is cool, man. This is a cool design. I love it. It's like some innovative stuff that, you know, being able to 3D print things. No, that's right where I like it. That's right. Almost touching the bell. Yeah, it's a nice sound. Cool, man. So there you go. Tectone mutes. Yeah, man. So now there's all kinds of. So yeah, man. That's I can talk about some other things as well if you like, but that's what I want to talk about with the mutes, which is a big part of. Become a big part of my life in the last couple of years, man. And again, I wasn't planning on it. It was just Winton came to me with a cracked mute. It's like, can you help me out? And this is what came of it. And it's turned into a little side business for me. And I'm really lucky to have Ed supporting us here in Sydney. And really glad to be here on behalf of Hirschman Mutes to talk about these mutes and share the process with you guys. And it's important to me. I'm a trumpet nerd, man. I am. It's just been my whole life. It's what I love to do. Yeah.
You get that lovely, breathy, soft sound.
Again, just like we're talking about with the Al Gray book, there's all the different positions for the plunger, and I've never thought about it with the different positions. With changing my sound, I've never really thought about it. I just do it. So I suppose if I analyze it, I could figure it out. But I was talking with Ed earlier about it. When I was young, I wanted to be an orchestral trumpet player. I used to practice all the excerpts and the concertos, and I knew that I didn't have it in me, and I would never be good enough to be like the next Bud Herseth. I just knew that I wasn't that level player. I just didn't have it in me. Part of it was I didn't love the music as much as I probably should have. Classical music. It just didn't speak to me as much as jazz. My dad was always playing Count Basie's band, Duke Ellington's band, and the Modern Jazz Quartet in my house. Milt Jackson, my dad played vibes. I love jazz. And I found that I could, I love Chet Baker. I love Jack Sheldon. And those two in particular both play with a really soft, fuzzy sound. And I really dug it. I really loved it. I didn't know how they did it. And I was studying, I'm not going to try and play it now because I, wouldn't be able to do the Artunian trumpet concerto justice. But, I tried to play with that pure, beautiful, classical kind of trumpet sound. And, but I love this fuzzy, Jack Sheldon, man, Guido Basso. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's out of Canada. And there's some great players that had a very airy sound that I really dug. And
Did you know Rick Kiefer?
yeah. He was in he was in Cologne for a long time.
Yeah.
Doing the WDR.
Yeah.
Oh, were you that?
Yeah.
Oh shit, okay. I auditioned for them many years ago.
Wow.
I did a couple of records with them.
Right.
I did a tour with them. Yeah. Andy Harder.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
John,
he's retired now. John
Really?
Marshall. Yeah, he left the band.
he was auditioning when I was on the band there.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a great player. But yeah, he's left.
Yeah, well,
But I'm not really sure how I get it. I just hear it. and do it. Just like with the plunger, I don't think about the position, I just know the sound and the feel that I want to get. So I just hear it, and we spend our lives doing exercises to train the muscles to do what we have in our mind, right? All these, all I know is this is called the buccinator muscle, right? Or these over here, but we do all these, Schlossberg's and Clark technical studies and all these things to basically get the sound in our head out of the horn. We train the muscles in our body to be able to produce that sound. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of fundamentals. Every day I play my fundamentals every single day, unless I take a day off. But if I'm playing the trumpet that day, I play fundamentals. And for me, that's hugely important. That's why it was so interesting that Sergei doesn't do that and never has. I have to. I'm not that gifted a trumpet player. I'm not James Morrison by any stretch. He's like maybe the most gifted musician in the history of mankind. I'm not that. I have to work hard at it every day. So I play my fundamentals every day and train the muscles to get the sound in my head out without me having to think about it. It's really a Bill Adam concept. There's an exercise he gives to his students, and I actually give to my students, where I tell them, when you're laying in bed at night, close your eyes and imagine the most beautiful sound in the world. And that might change from day to day, but the most beautiful sound on your instrument in the world. Close your eyes, take a deep breath in, fill your entire lung capacity. Then exhale as if you're playing. And as you exhale, imagine the most beautiful sound in the world. Do it 3 times, and then put it into words. You're laying in your room by yourself at night. Who cares if you're talking to yourself? Put it into words, speak it. What is that sound? Is it bright? Is it dark? Is it high? Is it low? Is it soft? Is it loud? Put it into words, describe it. And then you start to develop a concept of sound. And just like anything that's good in this world, it starts as a thought. This started as a thought. Everything starts as a thought, man. So your concept of sound starts as a thought. So maybe you relate your sound to Freddie Hubbard. Maybe it's Maynard Ferguson. Maybe it's Miles Davis. Those are 3 different extremes, but it doesn't matter. That's the most beautiful sound in the world. And then you start to realize that most beautiful sound in the world belongs to you, and only you. It's unique to each person. And they start to personalize that, and students start to understand the concept of sound. And then you do all these exercises, to develop the muscles to be able to get that sound out of the horn. So in terms of technically what I'm doing to get that soft, airy sound, man, I don't know. I hear it and I do it because I've trained my muscles to be able to do it. Then I can turn around. Very different kind of sound, right? But it's me. It's pure. It's true to who I am. So you train the muscles, and then you let the music speak through you. So I don't know what the hell I do, man. Other than I play my long tones every day.
I guess you've copied it at some point. You've done the copying too. Like you said, you think of
Sure.
Ken or
Absolutely, man. I mean, Clark Terry used to talk about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The three steps. What are they? Remember?
imitation.
Imitation,
That's right, yeah.
assimilation,
Innovation.
innovation.
Yeah.
Those 3. So yeah, I think anybody who wants to become a serious jazz musician has to go through those 3 steps. So imitation is the first one, man. So You know, you start listening to the masters, you know, and jazz music is a language, man. You're not gonna learn to speak Chinese by looking at it in a book. You gotta listen to it. You gotta hear it. You gotta experience the culture and understand how the language relates to the culture. Same with jazz music, all those things. You gotta hear it. You gotta listen to the music. You gotta understand the culture, where it came from, why it developed the way it developed. You gotta study history if you really want to understand the music on a deep level, you know, and start to listen to the music, start to transcribe solos. See, you know, I always, young students who haven't really done it yet, I always get them to first tell me who their, you know, if it's a trumpet player, who's your favorite trumpet player? All right, so let's say they say Clifford Brown. Okay, cool. What's your favorite Clifford Brown record? Study Brown. Okay, what's your favorite solo? They choose their favorite solo. And then, all right, you know that solo, can you play it? No. Okay, I want you to learn it. You know, transcribe it. What does that mean? Well, the way I have students transcribe is I have them first listen to it enough times where they can sing along with it. The last thing I have them do is write it down. First thing is to sing along with it, because then you start to get the nuance, the feel of it, the, you know, the vibrato, the, you know, the grace notes. You start to get all that when you just listen to it and then sing along with it, you know, and then learn it on your horn, play along with it. Then once you can do that, you can play the whole solo from memory, then write it down, because then you start to assimilate it, you know, and then you know, until you start to really internalize it. Just right, if you start off just by writing it down note by note, then you're going to rely on reading it. You know, you want to hear it, you want to feel it. You know, so that's part of the first step of imitation, is transcribing.
Do you think the writing down part of it is like equally important or important? Like if
I think
you
it's
wanted to
important.
pick and sing and play it, do you then still need to go write it down?
I do think it's important. I think it's important to write it down if you can. Some people can't. Some people don't know how to read music. You know, so if that's the case, then you have a talk about being able to learn how to read music if you want to be a successful musician and have a career. You know, but I think writing it down is important, because then you start to see the rhythms, how they're written. Then you write the chord changes above it. You see the notes that are played and how they work with the chord changes. How it's going through, cycling through 2-5-1s, or that's an example. And you start to understand. And then when it's written down, you can say, okay, take this 2-bar phrase and play through all the keys. And you can isolate things. So I think writing it down is definitely important. And it leads to more steps of learning things and taking things to another level. You know, that reminds me of one thing, you know, talking about fundamentals that I worked on with Claudio Roditi when I was studying with him. Anybody hip to Claudio? Man, he was amazing. I studied with Claudio, and I had a problem with articulation at the time. I was really struggling. I was ghosting notes a lot, you know, and Claudio heard it, and he said, you got to work on your articulation. Well, how do I do that? And it was the greatest exercise ever. He had me, you know, I had a book of manuscript paper, you know, that I would bring to my lessons, that I would take notes and whatnot. He said, take a page out of that book. It had 12 staves on it, right? He said, I want you to write a 4-bar phrase on the first staff, where it's all eighth notes with no 2 notes in a row that we're repeating. You know, so I wrote a little 4-bar phrase on the first staff. He said, okay, good. Now write it on every staff. So I wrote the same phrase on every staff. He said, okay, good. Now write a different articulation over each one. So that's the tricky part. So I've got this 4-bar phrase written 12 times, and I wrote a different articulation, 12 different ones. And he said, on the very last one, write the articulation how you would play this if you're playing in the middle of a solo. So how would you actually play this as music as opposed to an exercise? So I went through that, and it was a great exercise, man. He had me, it took me some time to be able to work it up and be able to have that much control over my articulation to be able to do that. First one, I would slur them all. Second one, tongue them all. Next, slur 2, tongue 2. Next, tongue 2, slur 2, you know, different variations. And then the very last one was the way that I would play it in a solo. And got to the point where I could play them all and brought it in, and it cleared up so much articulation issues I was having. It helped me get more control over how I wanted to articulate something in a jazz solo, you know, and it's a great exercise. Then he took it a step further. Once I could do that, he said, okay, good, now play it up half step. And then he had me run it through the keys. You know, so one thing leads to another. So transcribing solos by ear is great, but the next step to write it down is important because that leads you to the next step, which leads to the next step. So that's one thing I love about music, and I love especially about jazz music, is it's never ending, man. You're always going to keep learning and keep growing and keep getting better. There's no reason to ever become bored or complacent. You know, if you do, that's by choice. You know, because there's always more work to be done. There's always more to learn. You know, and I love it, man. That's what life is to me. It's about learning and growing. You know, and you know, taking things to the next level. So yeah, I think writing down is important. Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever tried playing a trombone?
Yeah.
That's a strange question. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned before, I got a P-bone
Oh, you got a P-bone
for developing the big blue plunger mute.
No, just because I recently bought a trombone and I'm giving it a go like 20-30 minutes a day when I can. But
Good, man.
after playing it, I try to switch over to the trumpet, and my lips feel like really kind of dead and like tight here, and like I kind of figured out one day I did make it work after doing some low notes and pedal tones and then like resting for like 5-10 minutes and then doing it slowly.
Cool.
But I just wanted to know if there are any tips to kind of get the lips back into the kind of trumpet mode, if I should say.
I don't know. I don't play it well. I've never really worked on it. In high school, I played in the junior varsity band. I played baritone horn.
Yeah.
Just because it had vowels and I could get around on it, and I didn't want to have to take another math class. But as far as playing, you know, that's close enough come to like playing that size mouthpiece regularly. I have a P-bone that I got during COVID to develop the plunger mute.
Yeah.
Thought I practiced on every day, but I didn't practice back and forth on them. I know some people who swear by it though.
Yeah.
Alex Ipiagan, I think, uses a trombone mouthpiece to enhance his trumpet playing. Another guy is Mike Mossman. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Mike. Great trumpet player, but he
There's
used
a
to.
Michael Mossman that does a lot of arranging too.
Yeah. Michael Philip Mossman is his full name. He played with Horace Silver when I first met him, and he played both trumpet and trombone. Another great trumpet player plays with Paquito de Rivera and Diego Urcola. Great, he plays great trumpet and trombone. I'm not sure if it's valve or slide though, but I know, and he's a friend of mine. We went to college together. He swears by it. He says his range on the trumpet didn't open up until he started playing the trombone, and he's got a double C now. So, I mean, if you do it right, you know, I think it can help your trumpet playing. Talk to James Morrison about it, man.
I want to meet him in person if I can. But
Oh shit, he lives out here. What's holding you back, man? Reach out to him, get a lesson. I would.
James says he doesn't go into a particular, like he doesn't want to go trumpet chops, trombone chops. He thinks keep going in between and don't slot into one too long. Or
Okay.
You know, so the flexibility is the key rather than
I guess it's
Interesting.
It's the way you play and approach the instruments, I guess. So I guess some people kind of get help from playing the trombone and some people. I mean, even when I googled it on like Trumpet Herald and whatnot, like everyone's opinions were like all different. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. I mean, you can ask 10 different teachers and get 20 different answers for any question you might have. You know, but ultimately, you know, we're all our own best teacher. Get as much advice from everybody that you possibly can, but figure out what works for you.
Then,
you know, nobody knows your strengths and weaknesses better than you do. Be relentless with yourself. Don't practice to sound good. Practice to get better. Don't play Clark's studies as fast as you possibly can to get them over with. Practice them slow and even to get your fingers and sound even. You know, don't practice to get it over with. You know, but you're your own best teacher, man. So, you know, read those forums, that's cool. Get ideas, but figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
You know? So that's my experience.
Great, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man. Anybody else got any?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Another plunger related question.
Yeah.
Before you made ya sound with your plunger and your mute combination. I know this is an old Ellington sound, tricky sound.
Mm-hmm.
Tricky sound and
Yeah.
Bubble Marley. But that sound, I love it. I don't really know the mechanics of how they formed that sound back in the 20s and 30s. I know you've got a combination now that replicates that, and I love it. It sounds great. Like you played through 2 yayas. It's like that's perfect. It sounds exactly like that sound. I don't know. Could you speak on any of the techniques that those guys use, or even I don't know, using that sound in your solos?
Yeah, I mean, it's, to me, music is timeless. So, I mean, a lot of people think of certain sounds or certain ways of playing as being dated. I don't think of it in those terms, honestly. If you hear it and you're playing it now, it's modern, it's today, and I try to be true to what I'm hearing no matter what. And those are techniques that, yeah, they utilized back then, like Tricky Sam, man. Like, is it Tricky Sam who played Cleo? You know that recording from Duke Ellington? Like, you would swear it's somebody singing. Yeah. Like, it's unbelievable, man. It gives me goosebumps to this day every time I hear it. That's something I haven't gotten to yet. I met a kid in Michigan, a high school kid who can do it recently. So only person I've ever heard other than Tricky Sam, who gave me goosebumps by doing that. I strive for that, and thank you for the compliment. I'm not there yet. I'm still trying to figure it out, trying to learn. But part of it, the equipment that they used back then, from what I understand, the trombone players were using trumpet straight mutes where they build up the corks. The trombone players in Duke Ellington's band had unparalleled straight mutes from France, which was trumpet straight mutes, and they build up the corks, and that's what they used in Duke Ellington's band. A specific trumpet straight mute. I was talking with a couple different trombone players and said, yeah, that's the sound. He said, but like my friend Ed Newmeister, who's probably the greatest trombone plunger player I've ever heard alive today, said, yeah, that's the sound, but you can only get 6 good notes out of it. But those are the notes that Duke wrote. So there's that. The trumpet players used cornet mutes that stuck way deep inside the bell, and they gave you a certain sound, but they were notoriously out of tune and stuffy. The plungers, toilet plungers, if you use those by themselves, they played incredibly out of tune when you play closed plungers. So to go from closed to open to go you're having to adjust a lot with your with your chops to adjust the pitch. So that's why I'm working on these mutes where this mute stands alone and plays in tune. This mute stands alone and plays in tune. So together they're going to be in tune. And it's going to be a lot easier to be able to get those sounds and get them more effectively. Now, I do have some friends who are really purists and really just, a great player, man, and a dear friend of mine, John Eric Kelso, who's one of the baddest plunger players I've ever heard, plays a really small plunger. And he almost always uses an old Pixie mute with it. And he gets that sound, and he just adjusts with his chops. Constantly he's adjusting, and it's okay. That's the sound he wants to get. I gave him one of these. He's like, no, I can't use that. It doesn't work for me. Okay, cool. For me, it works. Everybody's different, but the ya-ya, I asked this kid, how do you do that? And he's actually saying ya in his mouth while he plays. He's actually in his throat, or enunciating those syllables as he plays, and he hears it, and he's listened to so much of Tricky Sam. That's his man. So back to, learning a language. That's a language that he speaks better than any trombone player that I've ever heard in my life. That's his language. So he's studied it. He's listened to every recording. The kid is 17. Listened to every recording that Tricky Sam's ever done and studied it and practiced along with it and learned it, and got to the point where can not only imitate it, but he's assimilated it. And that's saying something with that language, because that's tough, man. With this equipment, it makes it easier with the right size under mute. I'm going to call this the PET mute. Pro Edge Pixie, PEP. So Pixie's still in the title, so if somebody does a search for it, or Pixie mute, they'll be able to find this. But Duke Ellington always called it a pep section, right? So it's going to be the pep mute, you know. But it makes it easier to get that. You know, it makes it easier because everything's in tune. You're not killing yourself just to get the notes out in tune, you know. But you gotta listen to it, man. You gotta hear it. You gotta feel it. You know, it's gotta come from here. It's gotta come from your heart, man. It's gotta come from your heart and soul, or you're not gonna do it. It's not just like anything, man. Right? All right. Any other questions? Anything anybody wants to talk about? What's Wynton Marsalis really like?
Any trumpet jokes?
Huh?
Yeah, trumpet jokes?
Trumpet jokes? No, there are none. We can talk about saxophones or oboes. We got perfect pitch.
What harmony do you use?
Depends on the gig.
Okay.
With Lincoln Center Band, for the section we use Gerald harmonies. I think he's got some.
The ball, the one with the.
Follow me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're right back there, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Those are what we use in the section for harmony without stem, and it's up to Ryan Kaiser. He's a lead player.
Yeah.
So that's what he likes for harmony without stem. It plays well in tune. It projects.
Yeah.
It's got a good buzz right down the middle.
Yeah.
For harmony with stem, we use these mutes. I'm drawing a blank on the name now. Shoot, sorry. They're made in Brazil, and this young Brazilian trumpet player brought me a set of them. Said, "Hey, I want to give this to you to try out with the section. If you like them, you can have them." And those are the ones that we use. They're white. They're plastic. I don't think they're 3D printed though. They're really smooth, white, and they have a metal stem. I think it's aluminum. I think the stem itself is aluminum. The end of the stem is plastic, but the stem that goes inside is aluminum. And those are what we use for harmony with stem. Wynton loves that mute. He loves to solo with it. You know.
Wow.
You know, so those are the harmonies that we use. Cut mutes we use we were using Ray Robinson's, but Ryan switched it to just stone line, Humenberg, the red and white ones. We've tried all kinds of different cut mutes. Roger Ingram gave us a set of his to try. We found them to be pretty dead. They didn't work too well, they didn't project. But we use the Humenberg cut mutes. We use Charlie Davis straight mutes. Yeah.
All right.
We use the easy bucket mutes are the ones. I forget the guy's name that makes those. Those are really great bucket mutes, and he makes them for all different bell sizes. You know, so Wynton and I both have the same size bell. Marcus is almost as big, and Ryan's is a little oversized too now. So we all have bucket mutes that fit our bells.
What trumpet is that you're playing?
It's a Del Quadro. There's a guy in Las Vegas named Mike Del Quadro who is making these great trumpets, man. I love it. I have 3 of his horns, all different models. They all have different characteristics. This is the one that's kind of middle of the road. It's called a Grande Campagna. There's one called the Mother, and he says that's only half the name. I can figure out the other half. It's a little bigger, bigger lead pipe. It's the same bell. The biggest difference is the lead pipe, and it's got a huge tone. I love that one. That's what I use when I play small group. I just love that sound. And then another one I have that is very similar to this one as well, but it's got a brass bell instead of a copper. This is a copper bell. This one I like with Lincoln Center Band. I like the way it balances and blends in the section. You know, every section is different, and you know, depending on what part you play, it's role playing.
Sure.
You got to understand. You know, I play second trumpet, so I got to be able to support the lead player. So I don't want a big, gigantic, fat sound like Wynton has. That's fourth trumpet. You want to anchor the section. The section's built like this, right? So the top of the section's very poignant sound. So I need to support him and hold him up.
Yeah.
So I got to have the right horn, the right mouthpiece.
Yeah.
You got to do that. You know. So this horn I love, man. So this is a Del Quadro Grande Campagna.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Yeah.
So I dig it. Yeah, man. Anybody, anything else? before we get out of here?
And is it a Carl Hammond mouthpiece?
What?
Is it a Carl Hammond mouthpiece?
This is a Greg Black
Oh.
mouthpiece. This is a custom mouthpiece.
Oh,
This is my
Greg Black.
signature
Oh.
mouthpiece. This is out, this model. It's only available through Josh Landris, J. Landris Brass in New York City. Sells them exclusively. This Kenny Rampton signature mouthpiece. I messed with the oxidation of it just because I'm an idiot.
Looks cool though.
But this is my signature mouthpiece. I think I have one here that's not messed up. Yeah, this is the commercial version of it. This was the one that I was playing before he put it out commercially. And this is a prototype for a new lead mouthpiece that I'm going to be putting out. This will be my lead's signature mouthpiece. Yeah.
Oh, I like it. It looks like a V cup.
Yeah, it's a VS cup.
Yeah, that's it. I'm more for like a flatter rims. Yeah.
Well, what sort of rim, how diameter?
It's about a 3C.
Really?
I've been playing Greg's mouthpieces for 25 years. He and a guy named Jeff Hill used to have a thing on Long Island, a little shop where they made mouthpieces. And in fact, Claudio took me to them first. His first person took me to them. And I've been having them make my mouthpieces forever, man. They parted ways, and Greg went on his own, and he was working out of New Jersey, Northridge, I think, New Jersey. Had a shop there for years, and then he moved. Now he's in North Carolina, and he's making mouthpieces. And Bobby Shu designed my first custom mouthpiece for me. Bobby was a friend and a teacher, and I've been playing in a bathtub of a mouthpiece. It's a gigantic mouthpiece. Back to me being an idiot. I was a kid, and Walt Lenton, my teacher, was, like I said, he was making me all these tapes of these great trumpet players, and one of the people that he made me a bunch of tapes of is Kenny Wheeler. And I just love Kenny Wheeler's playing. I actually ended up studying with him at a certain point, but his sound was just so beautiful and sonorous, and I was trying to get that sound, and I just had it on these cassette tapes. Like, God, it's so beautiful. So I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger mouthpieces, and then I got to study with Kenny at a workshop up in Canada in Banff, and said, man, how do you get that sound? And I was playing this huge equipment, this gigantic mouthpiece. He's like, oh, I play flugelhorn. Completely ruined my life. But he was playing double C's on flugelhorn. He was unbelievable. But so, eventually, I got together with Bobby Shu for some lessons, and I knew Bobby and my dad were friends. I've known Bobby since before I even played the trumpet. I've known Bobby since I was probably like 5 years old, and but I just knew him as a friend of the family, and finally at a certain point, I hit him up for lessons. I called him up. He was still living in LA at the time, and I was in New York, and I was working, I was touring, and I was coming through LA with the Mingus Big Band. I was playing the Hollywood Bowl, and playing lead, and I hadn't really done that before anywhere. And I talked to Bobby, and Bobby's like, "Yeah, you got to get a new mouthpiece." And I don't know what to do. And so I got together with him at his house in LA back then, and got a lesson. And he's like, "Oh, you can't play on this mouthpiece. There's no way you can play the trumpet efficiently on this mouthpiece. It's not going to work." And so he designed a mouthpiece for me based on what I was playing and what I should get to. So there was an intermediate mouthpiece that he first designed, and he wrote it down on a napkin, and I gave the napkin to Greg Black, and he made this mouthpiece for me. And then since then, Bobby had that intermediate mouthpiece, and he also designed a lead mouthpiece for me that I had Greg make, and it took me a long time to be able to play it. It was so small, and the stuff that Bobby told me, really be careful to watch my language. Being able to back off a mouthpiece, let the mouthpiece do the work for me. So because I was playing such a big mouthpiece, I had to put everything I had into it at all times. When you get a smaller mouthpiece, it's more, the shallow has got to tighter throat, a longer straightaway, the backboard's different, everything's different. You gotta learn how to back off it, you know, and manipulate the air a certain way to have it sing for you so it does the work and you don't have to work as hard. And started to learn how to do that a little bit. And so the mouthpieces I have now, my signature mouthpieces that are for sale, I actually called Bobby when Greg and Josh Landers came to me to sell these mouthpieces and put out a signature series. I called Bobby and I offered I said, man, I want to give you 50%. This is, you know, you designed these for me for free. You know, it's not fair for me to make money off of your work. Regardless, it was 25 years ago, but you know, he's my friend, man, and I gotta be respectful of that. And he turned it down. It's like, no, man, you've put in the work, you've worked hard your whole career, man, you deserve this, and it meant a lot to me, you know. Bobby's a great guy. You know, but I've been working with Greg for a very, very long time, man, and I've tweaked them over the years, you know, and this one, or you know, this is the commercial version. It was the same mouthpiece, the same exact mouthpiece. Was my main mouthpiece for a very, very long time, and it started selling and doing pretty well, you know. And so they said, hey, can you do a lead version of this? I said, well, sure. I'm not playing lead in any bands right now, but you know, so we worked this out. It's the same rim on both mouthpieces, about a 3C rim with a little more of a bite on the inside. I like that grip, you know, that I get from a little more bite on the inside of the rim.
Mm-hmm.
My regular mouthpiece, it's a VS cup, so it's a shallow cup, but it's got the V on the side, so it gives you a little more room. It gives the illusion of a bigger cup, but it gives you more efficiency.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like I can play this, but like I used to play my bathtub, you know, but it's much more efficient. You know, and you know, the throat, the backboard are different on both of them and all that stuff. But this one's smaller. This is, I think, my third version. So 20. This is the 26 throat. I think I like the 25. But you know, we're messing around with them. I'm using it on tour. I'm not playing lead, but you know, I have some written high Fs I gotta play, and you know, that's enough to be able to tell. Can I articulate on a high F? If I can do that, then I'm moving in the right direction. You know, so yeah, that's it. All right. Any other questions? You look like you're about to say something.
Yeah.
No, behind you. No? Okay. No? All right, well, let's wrap it up, man.
Yeah.
Thank you all. It's great to meet you all again, and thanks for having me. It was really cool to meet you all, and you know, I hope to see you soon, man. Any of you coming to our gigs over at the open house? Good, man. Well, I hope you enjoy them. You gonna hear the band, or you just come to see the orchestra piece? Both. Right on. The orchestra piece, it's an amazing piece of music, man.
Yeah.
Have you checked out the history of it and the meaning behind it?
No, not that one.
There are videos out there, man, where Whitney discusses, it's 12 movements, and it's really about different stages of life. Each movement is deep. It's really cool, and if you're able to hear it and you hear music on a certain level, you know, I've seen it bring people to tears. It can be pretty powerful. You know, if you start to really look at what each movement means and the different stages of your life and how you relate to it, it's pretty deep, man. There's some videos out there on YouTube, I think, where we're discussing it. Check it out before you come and hear it.
Absolutely. Cheers, thanks.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You know, and our band stuff is, you know, we do everything from older Duke Ellington stuff to brand new compositions that guys in the band have written for the band. You know, and standards that guys in the band have arranged for the band. I think we're doing a couple Monk things on this tour. We're doing some Duke. But yeah, it should be fun, man. You know, hope you all enjoy the shows. All right, man. Well, thank you all for coming, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.